Maria obtains the acacia key after successfully completing this puzzle. Before we move on from this puzzle into the next part of the game, it's critically important that we take a closer look here, because this is one major clue which is related to one of the main Silent Hill endings, this whole acacia key business. Now, this is probably not a surprise to most Silent Hill fans. First of all, we can see that Maria's inventory, from her inventory, each of these metal plates is embossed with a special symbol. These aren't just random symbols, of course. They hold a deep significance for James and his relationship with Mary. The objects on the plates represent the items James Sunderland must obtain in the main story in order to unlock the rebirth ending. And now it seems that Maria is involved in this ceremony as well. Now I'm going to borrow a few slides from my previous Silent Hill 2 videos. We can see that the very same items that James needs to presumably resurrect Mary are represented in Born from a Wish. So James needs to collect the Book of Lost Memories, the Crimson Ceremony Book, the Obsidian Goblet, and the White Chrism, or the Anointing Oil. Now, two of these objects represent masculine, feminine. One of these objects, and I'm not going to tell you which, I want you to figure that out. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. And then one of these objects represents the blending of the two. And the other object is essentially the, I guess you could say, is the invocation book, or the book that you would use to complete the ceremony. So Maria first places the board with the Crimson Ceremony Book into the tombstone, which makes perfect sense because the ritual would first require an invocation or a reading of the instruction manual, as it were. And I think I haven't looked too much into the Book of Lost Memories, to be honest, but there seems to be a wider relationship. The Book of Lost Memories is obviously kind of it seems to have a more wider relationship with the whole town and the history, and the Crimson Ceremony Book being specific to the resurrection ceremony. So I don't think that the Book of Lost Memories is specific to the ceremony. So next comes the blackboard with the obsidian goblet. And the goblet would need to be put in place before the subject's blood and the anointing oil or white chrism were poured into it. So the way these plates are put into the tombstone, they're done in a very specific order. And finally, of course, the white chrism would be poured into the goblet, with presumably the subject's blood already in it, as described by the Crimson Ceremony Book. But you might be asking, what about the Book of Lost Memories? Isn't that required for the ceremony as well? I would presume that it most certainly is in some way, but there doesn't seem to be a fourth plate for Maria to collect, which represents this book. So what do we do about the fact that this book seems to be missing? There's a couple of clues in the game. One is right in the tombstone. Curiously, it seems the developers of the game have accounted for this by including a green-colored board already within the tombstone. This appears to represent the Book of Lost Memories. Otherwise, I can't conceive of a reason why a green board would be placed in the middle of a tombstone. It should also be noted that Ernest makes a remark later on about the gods that is a direct reference to the Book of Lost Memories. So this step may have already been covered. It seems that Ernest has already read this book and has placed it in effigy within this tombstone. With something referred to as the inner garden, I cannot help but make comparisons with a reference to what's known as the hortus conclusus, which means the enclosed garden in Latin. And it's a very old idea that comes from the Song of Solomon from the Hebrew Bible. And in the Song of Solomon, it's essentially a song of love from King Solomon to his bride. Although in the Hebrew tradition, it has been interpreted and used allegorically to express the love between God and the nation of Israel, or the tribes of Israel. In the Christian tradition, the idea of the enclosed or inner garden from the Song of Solomon, of course, becomes prominent around the 14th century, and it symbolizes the purity of the Virgin Mary as well as the love for her child. And we started seeing the Song of Solomon depictions in art and literature started coming around the early Renaissance period in the 14th century. Now, this garden that Maria is in is a symbol for the love between Ernest Baldwin and his daughter Amy, right? That's probably the most obvious symbolism that we have here. Now, could this inner garden then also represent the love between James and Mary, or at least a love they once had? Is this the reason why the Baldwin mansion is not accessible by James, but only Maria, and perhaps the ghost of Mary as well? Is it because James left the sacred inner garden of love with Mary years ago, while the ghost of Mary might still dwell there? It's certainly an interesting possibility. Now, after the plates are aligned and the puzzle is solved, Maria obtains the acacia key. And then I thought this quote from author and mystic teacher Mara Freeman was especially fitting here. Quote, "The love is the only key that can unlock the door to the garden and reveal the secret of the hidden rose," unquote. That's an excerpt from the Avalon Mystery School. And I thought that was just a beautiful quote. And so I wanted to apply that to the inner garden found in the Baldwin mansion. Now, it seems most appropriate that the acacia key would be associated with this rebirth ceremony that Maria is involved in. Pictured here is a species of acacia tree found in the Negev desert region in southern Israel. The acacia tree has been venerated by the ancient Hebrews for its incorruptible and enduring qualities. It is said that wood from the acacia tree was used to construct the sanctuary of the tabernacle as well as the Holy Ark of the Covenant, in which the sacred Torah scrolls are kept. More commonly, an acacia branch was traditionally left at the head of graves as a sign of immortality. Symbolism of the acacia tree has been used in Freemasonic rituals and symbolism for 3 specific reasons, and they all relate to the plant's enduring nature. According to FreemasonInformation.com, first, the acacia in the mythic system of Freemasonry is preeminently the symbol of the immortality of the soul. Secondly, the acacia is a symbol of innocence. And lastly, the acacia is to be considered as the symbol of initiation. Now, it's also worth noting that before Maria reaches the inner garden and completes the tombstone puzzle, there are at least 2 different paintings in the mansion which depict the Crimson Ceremony book and the obsidian goblet together. It definitely seems a bit of foreshadowing and, of course, a clue to the puzzle that Mary finds both, or that Maria, I should say, finds both objects next to each other. Given the significance of this sacred plant, this acacia plant, it's neither a surprise nor a coincidence that Maria should need to attain the acacia key in order to reach Amy's room. There's also something even more profoundly interesting going on when we take into account Maria obtaining the matches in Amy's room right after using the acacia key. While I certainly doubt that Team Silent were intentionally alluding to the story of the burning bush in the Bible, right? When Maria uses, now hold on to your hats, when Maria uses the acacia key in order to obtain the matches, I cannot help but make this connection to the burning bush. And I'm going to tie this in to the primary significance of the acacia that isn't talked about. The most important thing about the acacia plant, and from which all other interpretations I have previously covered are derived from, so the granddaddy of all significances when it comes to this acacia plant, is that the story, it ties directly into the story of Moses and the burning bush from the Bible, but it goes far deeper than that. The source of all venerations, symbolism, and the importance of the acacia plant I speak of has been discussed by religious professors and biblical scholars for decades now, including Professor Benny Shannon at the Hebrew University at Jerusalem. He maintains that Moses was under the influence of DMT during his interaction with God in the biblical story of the burning bush. It is well known that at least 2 species of acacia found in the southern desert of Israel contain large amounts of DMT. This isn't the only story in the Bible associated with sacred plants, by the way. For the ancients, it seems, the acacia tree has been used to unlock direct access to the divine realms for a very long time. So that is the primary significance of the acacia, from which that is like the cheat code, right, to get to the divine realms or to experience the mystical and the magical world of the spirit realm, right? So the Silent Hill series and biblical references to martyrdom, sacrifice, atonement, virgin birth, sacred plants, right, and many other notions are often attributed to the presence of the religious cult known as the Order, right? We all know that Silent Hill is just completely riddled with religious ideas and sentiments. However, the references to religious ideas in Silent Hill appear to extend far beyond what we find in the artwork and symbols and doctrines found around the town or in the ideologies propagated by the Order, right? If you really look around, like I've just shown, there are some very interesting references and some very interesting ideas being propagated that I think extend further beyond just the public-facing religion, as it were. I would even say that the tone of Silent Hill games in general resembles a similar feeling of many real-life Christian religious services. At least I would say that. Having attended many religious services from nearly every main Christian denomination that I can think of, I can at least relay this interpretation of my own experience. Or maybe, of course, there's the possibility that there was a certain level of religious programming that I was exposed to at an early age, which causes me to view Silent Hill in this way. Maybe you've had a similar experience. I would love to hear viewer comments on this point specifically.